Good evening. So for all of you who are going to gather and sit in this center area, you might want to come get your seat now. We're just so glad to see all of you here when we realized that tonight was double booked. So if you are carrying a cell phone, by the way, I must have left mine in my office. Oh no, let me check. Check that you've turned it off or muted it, and then we'll carry on. So I want to welcome you to tonight's Voting Systems Educational Forum on Ranked Choice Voting and Star Voting that is hosted by the AAUW Salem Branch members. As a nonprofit organization, Capital Manor does not favor or oppose any candidate or ballot measure, but we are able to hold educational opportunities for our community on our campus. So we are delighted to provide our auditorium for tonight's program. So I did want to say that the date for this forum was actually finalized 10 months ago in August of 2023. So I think it is safe to say that we had this date first, long before it was selected for a presidential debate. But they forgot to ask us. So tonight's program is being recorded and it will be shared with the AAUW, the League of Women Voters, and Capital Manor to ensure that as many people as possible have the chance to see it, even if they are not able to be here this evening. So one final note, if you've taken a card to write down a question for the speakers during the question and answer time, I wanted to remind you that we will be picking them up after the speakers have both completed their presentations. And we'll just ask you to raise your hands when we are ready to collect the cards. So at this time, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Peggy Shippen.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda. And thank you all for coming here tonight. I really appreciate it. In 1881, a small group of women who had the privilege of being college graduates bonded together in Upper New York to advocate for women to attend college, open doors for their career advancement, and give them the right to vote. In 1920, the newly formed organization helped suffragettes pass the 19th Amendment that gave some women the right to vote. Over time, the organization was called the American Association of University Women. Today, AAUW is a highly respected organization with 170,000 members and 1,000 branches nationwide. Several Capital Manor residents are or have been members at one time or another. I've been an AAUW member for over 30 years, and I'm currently the Salem Branch Public Policy Chair. AAUW's mission is to advance gender equity for women and girls through research, education, and advocacy. Our vision is equity for all. Our values are to be nonpartisan, fact-based, principled, inclusive, and intersectional. 2 years ago, AAUW Salem Branch celebrated its 100th anniversary in this very room. Since its inception, AAUW Salem Branch has been involved in a wide variety of community activities, organizational collaborations, and scholarships that support women and girls, equity, diversity, and education in Salem. There are flyers on the back table if you want to know more about the organization. Throughout the years, we have collaborated with the Salem League of Women Voters on candidate debates and issue education forums, ones that you may have seen internally here at Capital Manor on CCTV. In November, Oregonians will be voting to change or not change our current state election voting system to a different one, just the state system. Two of these voting systems will be described tonight. The RCV, Rank Choice Voting System, will be on the ballot in November. The STAR, S-T-A-R, or Score Then Automatic Runoff System is not on the ballot, but is strongly being advocated. AAUW Salem members have been scratching their heads since we learned of this, wondering how can we possibly decide how to vote if we don't understand how these systems work? We wanted to learn more about each and thought, why not share our voter education opportunity with Capitol Manor community? We thank Capitol Manor and Linda Burks for having us here tonight, and Doug Cross for all his tech support and recording of the event for distribution to the League of Women Voters and ourselves, and for Capitol Manor to have also. And now I would like to introduce tonight's speaker. Saul Mora, you want to stand and show yourself? Is the political director at Oregon Ranked Choice Voting, where she focuses on managing and growing the coalition to pass ranked choice voting at the statewide level. Sarah grew up in Salem and graduated from Portland State University with a BA in Women's Studies. Saul has worked as a community organizer. Most recently, she served as a campaign manager of Portland United for Change to pass RCV measure in Portland, Oregon. The measure passed 58% voter support, so ranked choice voting is now the voting system used for Portland city elections. Sarah Wolk. Sarah, you want to stand, please? Sarah is the Star Voting Executive Director. Thank you. She is a peer-reviewed author on voting reform and founding member of the Equal Vote Coalition nonprofit and larger Star Voting Project. Inspired by the idea of win-win, she believes that voters deserve inspiring voter reform options that truly deliver on their goals. Sarah was born and raised in Oregon and has been active in the voting reform movement for over a decade. She has a background in sustainability and design and a passion for music, adventure, and community organizing. We will now flip a coin to see which of our lovely speakers will can choose whether to speak first or second. It's not a debate, but given the situation, this is what we decided would be fair. So Saul, because the ranked choice voting is already on the ballot, I gave Saul, she gets the opportunity to call heads or tails. And I'm wondering if one of our members would like to flip the coin. Madame? This is Claudia Carmichael. She's the president of our AAUW branch. And Claudia will flip the coin. And Saul, you call either heads or tails?
Let's do tails.
Tails, okay.
Heads.
Okay. Heads wins. And so, Sarah, you can decide whether or not you go first or second.
I'll go second.
Okay. Saul, you may start. Don't forget your cards. If you need a card during the program to write a question, Claudia, just raise your hand and they'll bring one to you. Afterwards, we'll collect them.
Can we get the presentation going? Hi, everyone. It is very lovely to be here with you all. While we do get this presentation up and running, I will just talk a little bit about myself. Like Peggy mentioned, I did grow up here in Salem, Oregon, in Northeast Salem. I graduated from McKay High School, and then I moved to Portland and studied at Portland State University. I am really happy to be here with you all, so let's just dive right into it. I am going to be talking about the statewide ranked choice voting ballot measure, which is on the ballot this November. So what is ranked choice voting? Ranked choice voting is a simple upgrade to our elections that allows voters to rank candidates in their order of preference. As a voter, you are able to rank as few or as many of the candidates as you would like in your order. So for example, I could say candidate B is really resonating with me. I'm going to put them as my first choice. And then there's another candidate, candidate D, that I really like as well because they share my values. I'm going to put them as my second choice. It is up to each voter how many candidates you decide to rank, but now you have this ability to do that. Ranked choice voting is currently used in over 50 places here in the United States, and that is everywhere from the local level all the way up to the statewide level. There are 2 states, Maine and Alaska, that are currently using ranked choice voting at this moment. So what are the specific benefits of ranked choice voting? So one of the most foundational benefits is that it's empowering voters with more choice and more voice. One of the things that we hear a lot from voters as we're having these community conversations is that voters feel very frustrated. They often are having to pick a candidate that has the best chance of winning, even if that candidate doesn't actually share the issues that they care about. Or sometimes you're simply using your vote to vote against the candidate that you really don't want to win. That doesn't feel like an exciting way of participating in democracy. And so with ranked choice voting, you have more agency on your ballot. If your first choice isn't the candidate that wins, your ballot now has more power to count for one of the other candidates that you feel aligned with. Another benefit of ranked choice voting, and I will underscore, this has been central to the reason that we are advocating for ranked choice voting for Oregon, is that it leads to better representation. There are so many different types of communities here in Oregon, from coastal communities, rural communities, young voters, senior voters, communities of color, right? So much diversity, and with ranked choice voting, it's allowing us to capture the way that our electorate looks in a more meaningful way. And so one of the examples that I like to emphasize for folks is that New York City is using ranked choice voting, and in their 2021 election, they had a historic win with ranked choice voting that produced the most diverse city council in their entire history. And so we do have the data that shows us that ranked choice voting is leading to more reflective outcomes. They had a majority women council for the first time, with a lot of people of color serving on that council as well. Another benefit of ranked choice voting is that with the system, candidates have to get 50% of the vote to win. And so it's ensuring broad support. Oftentimes, we hear that candidates that are backed by special interests are only paying attention to that specific platform, and they're not actually paying attention to the issues that most Oregonians care about. But with ranked choice voting, candidates now have to do the work to go out into different communities and not just their base, because they have to get 50% plus 1 of the vote to win. And so it's really encouraging candidates to have more conversations like this locally all across the state so that they can inform people about their platform. And in that way, it's creating campaigns that are more focused on the issues that we voters care about and not just the issues that special interests care about. So how does it work? Here's the fun part. I've heard that you all have a lot of questions about how ranked choice voting works. So hopefully this helps to enlighten you a little bit. So with ranked choice voting, here's an example ballot that you're seeing on the screen. You're able to rank the candidates in your specific order of preference. And I always like to emphasize, you can just rank 1 if that is really what you would like to do. You don't have to rank more than 1. But again, you have this agency and this ability to rank more if you would like to do that. And so in the first round, we're going to count everyone's first choice. So for example, if I put here in this example, candidate B as my first choice, we're counting that one in the first round. If a candidate has more than 50% of the vote, they win, and that's it. Nothing else needs to happen. However, if they don't have more than 50% of the vote, we're going to look at which candidate has the fewest votes. And whoever put that candidate as their first choice now has the ability to get their ballot counted for their next choice. So let's say that candidate B here was actually defeated. My vote would now count for my second choice, which is candidate A. So it's really giving you this sense of having a backup choice if your first choice does not win. So this is on the ballot this upcoming November. We are extremely excited that you all will have the opportunity to vote on this. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about the logistics of what this ballot measure does. So if voters approve this in November, it will apply to statewide and federal offices only. It will not affect local offices. It would be used in major primary and general elections as well. And if this does pass, it would help to standardize the way that we are implementing it locally. We're already seeing places here in Oregon, like the city of Portland, the city of Corvallis, Multnomah County, Benton County, they are already deciding to opt into ranked choice voting. And so what this ballot measure does is it creates the infrastructure, the voter education tools, the implementation for technology, so that those local jurisdictions are set up for success. It would also create robust voter education so that voters across the entire state understand how to use this. And if this passes, it would not go into effect until 2028. So we definitely have time for county clerks and for the Secretary of State to implement this as well as possible. One of the last things that I would like to emphasize is that we have over 55 supporting organizations and groups that represent Oregonians across the entire state. Some of these organizations include the League of Women Voters of Oregon, the Women's Foundation of Oregon, the American Federation of Teachers, as well as Veterans for All Voters. We are truly seeing that all of these diverse communities that represent many different types of Oregonians are ready for change. And the fact that this is on the ballot this November is a very crucial opportunity for voters to see that change happen and for this to positively impact all of our lives. I think the fact that we have such a broad coalition shows us that it doesn't matter what your background is, it doesn't matter what your political ideology or political party affiliation is, we all want to see that change because we don't feel like our voices are currently being counted. And so I really hope that you will go to our website. It's on your one-pager, OregonRCV.org. I hope that you will talk to your community, ask us questions. We are here to be a resource. There is so much education that exists, and the fact that this has been implemented in over 50 places in the United States is really helpful because we have those lessons learned. We have those tools for voter education that we will be able to bring here to Oregon. So I do encourage you to come up to us at the end of this if you have any questions that don't get answered. We also have our contact cards. We really want to be sure that we are here as a resource for you all. The last thing I will say is that we really need folks to get out the word. So if you're someone who is interested in hosting a house party, if you're interested in attending a tabling event, or just simply talking to your networks, to people that you know, we would absolutely love to have your support. And ultimately, we would also love to have AAUW's endorsement of this specific ballot measure. So we hope that you will take all of this information and consider supporting ranked choice voting this November.
Thank you, Saul, very much. We'll go ahead and have Sarah give her presentation, and then we'll do the Q&A.
Thank you. All right. Well, I'm Sarah Wolk from the Equal Vote Coalition. I'm the executive director, and I'm going to raise this up just a little bit. But Equal Vote Coalition, our mission is to fight for true equality in the vote itself. So the idea is that we should be able to vote our conscience without the fear of wasting our votes, and the candidate who best represents the will of the people should actually win. And I think a lot of us in this room can probably relate to the feeling of not feeling like the winner actually was representative of the electorate or of us personally. And this is something that we can absolutely fix. But to start off, I want to kind of introduce our team. Equal Vote Coalition is a local, nonpartisan nonprofit. It's mostly volunteer-led and founded right here in Oregon. We are now about a decade old and have been focused on star voting for the majority of that time. But back to traditional voting, this is kind of the problem we're setting out to solve. With the current system, I think a lot of people, if it doesn't seem like your favorite can win, people are faced with this existential question of, should I be voting for the candidate, the front runner on my side, who seems the most electable? And as we all know, electability is not necessarily a fair judge of character or of issues. The candidates that we find electable are often the ones with name recognition, with the most money, with the power backing behind them. And the reason that this electability bias is so strong in our current voting system, and to a lesser extent in ranked choice voting, is that the current system works fine if there are only 2 candidates in the race. If we have only 2 candidates, we get a simple majority winner. Fantastic. And that's what we see on the left. So we've got Luke Skywalker. He's got a 60% majority. He's up against Darth Vader. Clearly not a great opponent, and he wins easily. But if you add in a bigger coalition, all of a sudden he's got Yoda, he's got Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia is here, Han Solo, and Chewbacca. In life, if you have a bigger coalition, you're more likely to actually win. But with voting, you're more likely to actually split your support between your coalition and end up essentially divided and conquered. So Leia, for example, it was her idea, she had the blueprints, but under the current system, she would be told to sit down, wait her turn, don't run for office. We've kind of already knighted the successor for this seat, and so on. So vote splitting causes the spoiler effect, which many of you know about through Ralph Nader or Ross Perot. Both political parties have lost the presidency because of this vote splitting phenomena. And it leads to strategic voting, wasted votes, gatekeeping, increased polarization, 2-party domination. It magnifies the influence of money in politics. And again, this electability bias that entrenches everything, that we see in our politics, where I think a lot of us don't feel represented. So that brings us to the existential question. I got involved as a volunteer for Ranked Choice Voting Oregon, and at my first meeting there, I found out, there's multiple different voting methods. I didn't realize that. We realized we didn't have consensus within our own movement about what voting reform to go forward with. And so we decided to convene a research committee to look at the options. And we made the smart decision of coming to consensus on our values before choosing our voting method. So we want a voting method to be simple. It should be easy to vote, easy to understand, easy to tally, implement, and audit. From a voter perspective, it should be honest. It should be safe to vote your conscience. It should be incentivized to vote your conscience. And it should be expressive enough that we can actually show our full honest opinion. In a simple 2-candidate election, maybe we don't need more information than just who's your favorite, but in a close competitive race, we need more information to find the best winner. And then that's what we need to get accurate results. So elections should reflect the will of the people as best as possible. And last but not least, and this is the mission statement of our nonprofit, the voting method should be equal. My vote should mathematically be just as powerful as your vote, no matter how many candidates I've got on my side, who I am, where I live, what party I affiliate with. And that is something that we don't have with our current voting method. So which methods eliminate vote splitting? There are a number of different ways to skin the cat. Star voting is our flagship proposal. We recommend it, but you can do the same thing with a ranked ballot if you count all the rankings. You can also do the same with approval voting, which is a more traditional looking ballot. So 2 systems don't eliminate vote splitting, and those are our current system and ranked choice voting. So what does it take to eliminate vote splitting? Number 1, we need to allow voters to support as many candidates as they like. We need to allow voters to support candidates equally if they like them equally. And we need to count all the ballot data. That one seems like it should go without saying, but not all voting methods actually count all the ballot data. And if you don't count all the ballot data, you don't eliminate vote splitting. So if a voter can show that they support all the candidates on their side, then factions are able to naturally coalition to prevent being divided and conquered. So that brings us to star voting. You give your favorite 5 stars, give your last choice 0 stars, or leave them blank. You score the other candidates as desired, and equal scores indicate no preference. So if you like 2 people equally, you can give them the same score. You can show your preference order, but you can also show how much or how little do you like those candidates. So is your second choice as good as your favorite? Or is your second choice a lesser evil who you might want to give 1 star to? You really don't support them, but if it came down to your worst case scenario, you do have a preference. And with star voting, you're really able to show that more nuanced opinion in a very natural way. So for those of you who have been around in the world for a minute, you might recognize this. It's just a 5-star rating. Oh, wrong way. And it's counted in a 2-step process. So with star voting, you only have to vote once. In the first round, you add up all the scores, and you find the 2 highest scoring candidates. Those are your finalists. So in this example, we've got Carmen and Blake. They're the 2 highest scoring candidates overall, and those 2 advance to the next round, which is an automatic runoff. And you don't have to vote again. The runoff's just automatically tallied. In the runoff, your ballot counts as 1 vote for the finalist you prefer. So 1 person, 1 vote. In this example, this person's favorite was Andre. Andre didn't make it to the runoff, but they clearly prefer Carmen over Blake, and so their vote goes to Carmen. And luckily, Carmen wins this election with 58% of the votes. So we get a really kind of familiar looking result. With star voting, it's just addition. In the first round, you add up the stars. In the second round, you add up the votes. Again, 1 person, 1 vote. And one of the benefits of having simple addition is that it's all tallied. It can be tallied at the local level. So with star voting, you can count preliminary results as they come in. You can count them by county. If you're doing a statewide election, you don't have to truck all your ballots to a central location. So you don't have those kinds of delays or election security concerns. And it's being considered all over the country. Again, we're a volunteer-driven movement. We've got chapters all over the place and people working on this, actually not just in the US, but also in Canada, in Europe, in South America. Better voting is something that everyone needs, no matter where they live. And we have a big coalition as well that we're really proud of, and actually quite a much bigger coalition since we made this slide. So star voting was almost on the ballot. We had a statewide petition this year, and the legislature kind of preempted that and went forward with ranked choice voting in the 11th hour. And we also had a local ballot initiative to pass it in Eugene. But star voting is very much a contender for voting reform. So that's kind of the message here today, is that we have choices on the ballot between ranked choice, between star voting, or other voting reforms. And I think we do owe it to voters to get this issue right. So star voting and ranked choice have a lot in common. I think we set out to solve the same problems, but there's also a lot of differences. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I appreciate it. Okay, so is the marshal on? Oh, there we go. Thank you very much. Okay, does anyone have questions that you can that you'd like to have put on a card for us to collect?
No, but that last slide would have been nice to see that more, the comparison.
I think that our position was that it's not a debate, and that it's just to these gals are here. Well, they'll be happy to explain their system to you. At another time, we might, under the other circumstances, we could have had a debate, but so far, only the one is on the ballot. So, yes.
Oh, yes. So I have cards and pens. If now that you've heard both presentations. Anyone else? Anybody over here? In the car? Anyone else have a question?
I've already filled one out.
Okay.
So if you filled one out, we'll take a look at them and look through them. Claudia and I will look through them.
Do you think it would be, do you want our speakers to go up on stage? Or is it easier to just?
Stand by the mic so we can be heard.
Because we have a mic for each of you.
Okay.
Our thought was that we would just put you up here and you can sit down and answer questions. Why don't we do that? That'll be easy. We don't want you having to get up and sit down. Get up and sit down.
Yeah. I like the living room chairs.
Yeah.
It's very comfortable.
It feels better.
Okay, while we're collecting cards, I think I'll just go ahead with ranked choice voting. Could you end up with governor, lieutenant governor, president, vice president from different political parties?
So, is this on? Hello.
Testing, testing.
So sorry. Oh my goodness. So just to clarify the first part of that question, if this ballot measure passes in November, it will only apply to statewide and federal elections specifically. So for statewide specific offices, that includes the governor, the secretary of state, attorney general, and so on and so forth. For federal elections, that will include the U.S. president as well as U.S. Congress. So I just wanted to clarify that only elections that all eligible voters across the state participate in are the specific elections that ranked choice voting would apply to. And can you repeat the second part of their question again?
Okay, it was just, could there be, if parties from a different, for president and vice president, I think you really
Yeah.
answered that.
So the other part of the question, I think it's trying to get at whether there will be multiple political parties on the ballot. And with ranked choice voting, you would use it in a closed primary. So for example, if you are a registered Democrat, you would be able to participate in that closed primary. This does not open the primaries. So again, if you're registered as a Republican, you would be able to rank the options in the primary. Ultimately, in that closed election, a candidate needs to have 50% plus one of the vote for that candidate to move on to the November general. In the November general, voters will then be able to rank the candidates once more, and you would be able to see, you know, the Republican candidate, the Democratic candidate, and so on and so forth.
Was that your question? Did you have that?
Is that mine?
Was that your question?
No, I was really interested in who's not going to, what positions will not be used. Are the legislators part of this as well? the state-
That's a great question. I'll go ahead and repeat it for everyone. So the question is, which offices does this ballot measure not apply to? So it does not apply to state legislative races. So the Oregon State Legislature will not be included. One of the reasons that we decided to focus on statewide and federal elections are really looking at the specific elections that tend to have 3 or more candidates running for office. if voters are able to rank their options, it doesn't make as much sense if you're ranking two of the candidates, and a lot of those legislative seats only tend to have one or two candidates that are running for office. And so we just felt like with the statewide and federal, voters are getting the most impact and benefit from those particular elections. And I will also say, you know, the fact that we went through the Oregon legislature as we were building out this policy meant that we were able to work with the county clerks. We were able to get, you know, input from the Secretary of State, and we wanted to go with incremental change because we heard from the county clerks that it would be best for them if we focus on the statewide and the federal elections first.
Okay, we're going to go on to a question for star voting. If I gave a rank of 0 to the 2 finalists, what happens to my vote?
Yeah, so just quickly, the Association of County Clerks recommended a no vote on the ranked choice voting initiative, and that's who tallies all of Oregon elections. So that's a correction.
The guidelines of this event is that it is not a debate, so
Yeah, but
if you
that is
could
just
respect
factually-
that.
Let's try to keep our, not a debate.
Actually not true.
We
Thank
did
you.
work
So,
with them.
yeah, I don't need to debate,
Okay,
but
Sarah,
do
can
wanna
you
answer your question.
If I gave a rank of 0 to the 2 finalists, what happens to my vote?
yeah, so that would be exactly like in the current system if you didn't vote for the front runner. A candidate you like didn't win, unfortunately. But in star voting, if you did have a preference, even if none of your favorites win, you would have been able to have an impact as well. So yeah, 0 for both means I do not support either of you under any circumstances. I hate both candidates.
Give you an opportunity to have a follow-up for each one. Okay, back to ranked choice voting. In areas where ranked choice voting has been used, is there any information as to whether or not it increases the numbers of people voting?
That is a great question. So there are different organizations that focus on tracking data of the places that do use ranked choice voting. With the increase of voter turnout, it is a very mixed bag. So we cannot confidently say that it does lead to increased turnout. But one of the things that I really like to emphasize is that it gives voters a different approach and mentality for how they're filling out their ballot. So there is more incentive for folks to participate. So I can't guarantee that we will see more people voting. But, you know, as a young person myself, as we're growing this coalition across Oregon, you know, I talk about this with young voters, and it's something that is very appealing to different types of voters, especially with young folks, because they do feel like we're constantly having to pick in between the lesser of two evils. So there's no data that points to that. The data that I can share with you is that in the places that have adopted ranked choice voting, we are seeing that voters understand how to use it. Voters find it simple to use. In New York City, in their election, over 95% of voters found the ballot simple to understand. And so, you know, again, across all demographics, folks do know how to use it.
All right, Sarah, what is the cost to implement the star voting system?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with star voting, all that would be required for implementing it is just a software upgrade to our current election infrastructure. So we wouldn't need any new hardware, new voting machines, or anything like that. Just a software upgrade and then a recertification of that election infrastructure. Plus, of course, voter education. One thing that we would not have to pay for with star voting is to set up a central bureau of election tabulation. So with ranked choice, if we vote yes, we would need to centralize all the ballots in Salem, which is a huge cost, and that is not a cost that we would have to do if we did statewide star voting. Sorry, I don't know how to, they're very important, like relevant details.
How much is the cost for ranked choice?
So we actually do have an estimate that just came out very recently. It would be $5 million, and that includes the voter education campaign, all of the materials that the Secretary of State creates will be translated into the top 5 most spoken languages across Oregon. And so there really would be that focus on making sure that we are reaching populations that have lower voter turnouts, that speak different languages other than English. And that also does include the technical software. I do want to bring this up since it already came up with the centralization. So with ranked choice voting, if it passes, the ballots will stay physically at each county. It's the data of the rankings that would have to be centralized at the Secretary of State's office. So the physical ballots are not being transported. They are not being moved anywhere. It's the raw data that will then be going through the software the Secretary of State uses.
Thank you very much, ladies. I know it's hard not to be debate. You make it very hard for me to do my job. But we do appreciate it. And are there any other questions from the audience of the speakers, of our speakers? Oh, Linda.
I didn't know how to word this, so I did write it down, but here's what I'm curious about. So it seems like for both the ranked choice voting and the star voting, there's more than one level. So voters vote once, correct? But then there could be a second phase if needed. So does that mean that the ballots are counted twice? Does somebody have to process them the second time around? I'm curious for both methods. Does that make sense? I'm just wondering.
Yes.
So you go through and you get your first data, and then do you go through it all again?
Yeah, so I think technically the answer is the same for both. You vote, you run the ballot through, and the tabulation's automatic or instant. So you don't have to vote twice. You don't have to like redo the whole thing, but it is counted in a 2-step process for star voting. So you have a scoring round where you're adding up the scores, and then one automatic runoff between those top 2 finalists.
Yeah, so again, as the voter experience, you only fill out your ballot once. One of the things I also really like to emphasize for Oregon, because we have vote by mail, I think that pairs really great with ranked choice voting because you will have your ballot, you'll be able to decide if you want to rank multiple candidates, and then, it's very easy to drop those off. The process is automatic because of the type of software that we're using. So, I could not sit here and do that myself. I don't have that brain power, but with the software, it will automatically calculate which candidate has 50% or more of the vote when counting the first choices. If no candidate has reached a majority, then we're looking at the candidate with the fewest amounts of votes. They are now defeated, and whoever marked that candidate as their number 1, if they marked a next choice, their ballot will then be counted. But all of this is happening, with software that can do it very, very quickly.
Excellent. Any other questions? Well, with that, I want to thank our speakers for coming today and giving us a whole lot of information that I know I didn't have, and I really appreciate having. I encourage you to meet with both of these wonderful women and to go over to the table and continue to ask them more questions if you have them. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
come say hi.
Thank you very much.
And thank you all. What do you think about showing the election results for our 2 polls that we did? Because we have our star voting demo election and our ranked choice voting election. Did everyone here get which pet is best star voting ballot up front or get to vote online? And did anyone scan that QR code for the ranked choice voting test election?
Very few people, unfortunately. It's okay. Yeah, if you come over to our table, we can walk you through how to fill out a ballot if you're interested. We're ranking pies.
It's a practice. It's a practice to pick a pet. It's a practice on how the systems work. So that's a fun way to get acquainted with each system.
All right. Well, thank you to AAUW for hosting us in Capital Manor. Definitely appreciate everyone taking the time to do the deep dive on this issue. It's a really fundamental issue. Obviously, elections have a ton of impact.
Thank you so much, ladies.
All right. Cool.
Yeah, so just factually, that was a correction. There are a couple corrections I held back on.
Presentations were supposed to be like